Hey guys, Brad here from Scooter Street. Look, you guys have been asking us for some more four-stroke content, and behind me I have that very thing. I have a Vespa Primavera 50cc. This is one of the new 𝐒𝐜𝐸 models. It's been around for a few years. Obviously these are a 50cc four-stroke, and if you have one or you've ever ridden one, you would know that they are disgustingly slow from factory. Customer brought this one in. He stated that he bought it, and without knowing when he bought it, realized that the bike only did 45 k's an hour max speed, which just is dangerous on the road around cars. You're holding up traffic, you're causing problems, you're copping abuse from drivers because you basically can't keep up with the flow of traffic unless you're in a school zone. So this video is pretty much going to be what we would characterize as being, I guess, the full factory de-restriction of these bikes. There's a few restrictions in them from factory. So really there's primarily three parts that you need to get the bike up to a realistic safe speed on the road. I would consider that to be a speed that's over 60 kilometers per hour minimum. Now this particular bike here is doing 66 k's an hour as it is now. It's still got the factory 50cc cylinder. What we've changed is we've installed a Mossi variator, we've installed a Mossi gear up kit, and we've also installed the Mossi ECU, which essentially removes the RPM restriction on the factory, and the gear up kit and the variator kind of really work together. Variator gives you a bit more acceleration. The gear up kit kind of takes some acceleration away but trades it for top speed. So by putting them both together, you kind of get a bit of a trade-off where you keep pretty much the same acceleration as factory, but you get significantly more top speed. Now, one of the major downsides of a lot of the new Euro emissions laws is it's pretty much killed two-strokes. So if you want to buy a brand new scooter, you're basically stuck with a four-stroke. So if you've already got one of these bikes, this video is going to be really helpful for you because you're kind of stuck with it now. So you want to at least be able to keep up with the flow of traffic. And that's what these three parts installing will do for you. Now, unfortunately, going along with that four-strokes, one of the other downsides of four-strokes other than being slow is to get a lot more speed out of them, you have to spend a pretty significant amount of money compared to what you could do on a two-stroke for the same amount of money. So unfortunately, this kit isn't particularly cheap, but as I mentioned, you're stuck with the bike now, so it'd be nice to at least be able to use it on the road. Okay, so I'm gonna go into these three parts that we've installed on this bike now in a bit more depth. Right, so we'll start off with the ECU. So the ECU is actually located up pretty much just behind this part of the front cover here. So to get to it, we need to take what's called a leg shield off. This is this component here. So we'll pop our glove box. They have three T30 screws, Torx screws, holding it in. So we'll take those out. And there's two pretty strong clips up on either side of the top of the leg shield. And they go into little slots in the front cover. So you kind of need to be, especially if it's the first time you've taken it off, you need to be a little bit, not violent, but you need to use, a little bit of manual persuasion, I would call it. You'll feel that you're going to break it, but you won't. You just need to, it is a tight fit, these clips. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that off. Okay, so after you've been struggling with it and cursing at it for 10 minutes, what you want to do is remember that behind these two little rubber plugs, there's actually two more bolts, not just the three. Wow, it's like magic. Okay, and that is pretty instantly recognizable as the Mossi ECU. Now, this is the factory ECU here, basically looks identical, same plugs, it's literally just plug and play. There's just two little 8mm bolts that hold it in. Release those, take your plugs out, put the Mossi ECU plugs in, bolt it in, and that's that. So second part of our Mossi ECU install, this is the factory one, but this is the air tubes. This is the tube that goes from the airbox to the throttle body, which is obviously being an injected scooter, it doesn't have a carburetor, it has a throttle body. Maybe you can see in this, but these air tubes, are so restrictive. They're really, really small. So the Mossi ECU kit actually comes with a replacement tube, which is a larger internal diameter, so you can get a bit more airflow to the bike. One of the great things about these Vespas is the seat just pops out. Okay, we can get a bit of a better view. So that's our air tube just here. See, obviously this is our air box. That's the throttle body, the air intake for the engine. And that's the tube here. So quite an easy part to install. Being rubber, it's flexible. You're under the hose clamps and it'll just sort of flex out of the way. You might be able to see, even just from the external diameter, the Mossi air tube is quite a bit bigger, but the big difference is obviously the internal diameter. So you might be able to see from this angle, you see. So you see it's quite restrictive. It sort of collars down to a very, very small size. That's all the air that your bike can suck. Obviously the Mossi ECU allows the bike to fuel up a little bit more. And so with this larger air tube, we're able to get significantly more air to match the greater fuel consumption. These can be a bit of a pain to get these covers. Just be very gently pry them with a screwdriver or a similar tool. There we go. Okay, so I've got the cover off. We can see, obviously this is our Mossi variator inside, back behind here. Got our factory variator here. Now, the big advantage with the Mossi variator is it sort of increases quite a bit the initial acceleration and keeps the revs a lot more, and the acceleration a lot more linear throughout the revs rather than getting peaks and drops in the revs, which the factory variators tend to be quite bad for. So this means it keeps our acceleration and the revs a lot more consistent as the bike revs through its speed range. Now, if you have a keen eye, you might notice our pen marks just here. Now, we always, with tuning variators, recommend doing pen marks on the face of the variator, the driven face. That way you can see how far out the belt's going, because when the bike's at top speed, the belt is all the way up in the variator and all the way down in the rear pulley or the torque driver. So the belt getting further up the variator is where we get our top speed. So we want to put pen marks there just so we can see how far the variator is going out. If it's not going all the way out, generally, but not always, it means that we need to put some heavy rollers in the bike because it's not getting the full use of the variator face. It's not getting all the way out to its top gear. Imagine this is a 6-speed manual transmission, right? As an analogy, it's like, you know, having a big gap at the top where the belt's not getting to. It's like we're just getting to 5th gear. We're not actually engaging 6th. So when you have a sort of a chunk of the variator face that's not being utilized, it means that you essentially have some additional top speed gearing that's not being utilized. Now, we're finished tuning with this one as it is now. You might be thinking, well, why have you still got a bit of pen mark left on the face? Now, the reason for this comes down primarily to what I discussed earlier. The bike's hitting its power limit. It just doesn't have the power to push through the level of resistance it's encountering at that speed, you know, wind resistance, road resistance, all that sort of thing. It's hitting its power limit. So if we were to put, say, a 79 kit in this now, you know, a big bore cylinder kit, I think you would find that the variator would get all the way out, or it would get further, you know, would erase those pen marks a little further, able to access a bit more gearing because it would have the power to overcome the resistance at its top speed, and it would be able to push through and access a higher level of gearing. Because with the variator, it functions by centrifugal force. So the faster the variator is spinning, the more it pushes against the belt, which forces the belt further up the driven face of the variator. Now, the bike's getting to a point where it just doesn't have the power to force the rollers out any further to get any more top speed out of the bike. So if we put heavier rollers in this, I would say 99%, it's just going to slow the acceleration. It's not going to increase the top speed because the power hasn't changed. And that's the limiting factor of this bike now. We've accessed every bit of power that we can out of the 50cc cylinder. And at this point, the limiting factor is the power. Now with this bike, because we've not done a gear up kit accompanying the ECU and the variator on one of these bikes before, during the week we fitted all the parts first, obviously, because we wanted to make sure that it would work before we posted this video, because we want to make sure things work and we're giving out accurate information. Now because of that, I'm not going to show you the gear up kit install because it is slightly more in depth and I don't really want to pull all the gears apart. On these bikes, the gear case is bolted to the outside of the engine casing. Now, say for instance, a 2-stroke 50 Piaggio, the gear case is on the inside, so it's a bit easier to get to. With these, you got to pull the wheel off. It's a bit more of a mission. So I'm not going to pull it all back apart again to show you the gear up kit install. If that's something you want to see, please let us know in the comments, because that helps us sort of aim our content at what people want to see. In regards to the variator, I'm not going to pull it back out into the install again, because we have actually previously on this channel done a variator install video on a Primavera 50, and I'll chuck a link for that in the description below. Again, if that's something that you guys want to see again, please let us know, because we're always trying to make content that you guys want to see. Now, on that note with the variator, as it pertains to variator tuning, the rollers that come in the Mossi kit with this particular kit for this bike are 6.1 gram each. Now, I've said it a million times before, every bike's a little bit different. You need to tune your bike individually. Now, this one in particular, we end up going lighter in the rollers from the 6.1 that come in the kit down to 5.7 grams per roller. It made a bit of a difference to the initial acceleration. Now, with the gear up kit, you could probably even maybe test going a little bit lighter again. It also depends on the weight of the rider. I feel this bike with the initial acceleration could probably be increased with some stiffer clutch springs, you know, just to get things moving a bit quicker at the start. But how it is now, it's pretty good. Obviously, it's getting up to a good top speed, and the acceleration is definitely better than it was from factory, significantly better. But again, there's a few factors to this. Like we say, every bike's different and every rider weight is different. So you sort of need to tune the bike, A, to your preferences, B, to your bike, and C, to your weight as well as a rider. Now, moving upwards from this, if you wanted to get a bit more power and a bit more speed out of this bike, because that 66 number, it's now limited by its power. It's hit the limit with which the bike can push past in terms of its power. So if you want more speed and more acceleration now, you're going to be looking at a cylinder kit. Now, Mossi and Polini and a bunch of other brands do a 79 kit for these bikes. It increases the capacity from 50cc up to 79cc. Now, unfortunately, again, with the 4-stroke, it's a lot more expensive, and it is more complicated than doing, say, a 70 kit, like a big bore kit on a 2-stroke. On a 2-stroke, you don't have to worry about valves or timing chains, all that sort of stuff. With the 4-stroke, you do. So it doesn't mean you can't do it at home. If you're relatively mechanically inclined and you're happy to sort of follow along with different videos that you find on installing such parts, it is something that you can do at home. It's just a little bit more complicated and probably a little bit more daunting for someone who hasn't done it before. Now, that being said, we have installed one of these kits in the shop before, and we did see a big increase in the power. So I'm very confident if you were to put a 79 kit in this bike now, how it is with those 3 de-restriction parts that we mentioned, you get quite a bit more speed out of it. You might even get up to, say, you know, I would expect more than 70 k's an hour, and you'll get there a lot faster. Anyway, hopefully there's some good info in there for you if you have one of these bikes. I'm gonna put links to all 3 of the parts that we've discussed in this video, being the Mossi ECU, the Mossi variator kit, and the Mossi gear up kit, down in the description, as well as I mentioned, the link to the variator install video that we've done before. As always, guys, if you have any questions at all, please let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.